Silence my phone.
So it's like,
Okay,
but unfortunately, that has to be a separate.
we're on the air. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Counselor Brennan?
Here.
Counselor Lavin?
I am here.
Counselor Peeler?
Here.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Here.
Counselor Gilat? Counselor Petropoulos?
Here.
Counselor Morocco?
Here.
Counselor Whitfield?
Here.
Mayor Valentino?
Here. I believe Councilor Gilat was at the fireman's event. He should be
in the
here.
hallway.
He's just outside.
Okay. He's walking in.
He's on Italian time.
Okay, before we get into the agenda, what I'd like to do is make a motion to amend the agenda to add a resolution adopting amended levels of real property tax exemptions for senior citizens under real property tax law, section 467. The reason I'm adding this to the agenda tonight is because we had a typo on the table last week when we passed this resolution. We had one of the exemption levels was $19,999 to $19,999. So it was a misprint. So this is just to get that correction into there. So I'm making a motion. I need a second.
So moved.
Counselor Peeler, any discussion? So we're going to add that to the agenda. I'm also going to make another motion to add to the agenda the public hearing for overriding the tax cap. I think it's important for us to review it. Last meeting, we didn't get it on the floor, so I'm bringing it back up again to see if we can make some motions on that or have discussions on that. So I'm making a motion to set the public hearing to override the tax cap.
Second.
Second by Councilor Peeler. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll for amending the agenda to add a resolution for a public hearing for overriding the tax cap.
Counselor Brennan?
Nay.
Counselor Lavin?
No,
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Morocco?
Aye.
Counselor Whitfield?
No.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, so we'll go into budget discussion, and then we'll clean things up at the end with the two resolutions we added.
All right, so I will start us off. Each of you has some notes about how this process works and then some information on the proposed budget, because when reviewing some of the conversations from the last meeting, there were some different numbers thrown out, so I just want to make sure we have all the same numbers and percentages. So to begin with, this budget work session process will allow you the opportunity to have questions addressed by staff. The questions raised were provided prior to the meeting, although follow-up questions on tonight's agenda topics can go ahead and come to the table. As you can see, the only staff here are the comptroller and myself, because any departmental questions were asked after the deadline. At future meetings, there will be additional questions asked. You can ask for the next budget session. All of those questions, we ask to have them by Friday, and then staff can prepare to respond to them the following Wednesday. The other side of this is modifications to the budget can be made on the floor, just like any of your other council meetings. They take a second to modify, and then you can have that discussion on that modification, and then it's a motion. So the motion to modify the budget, second on that, and then you can vote on the floor to have that modification. Those modifications then are all passed at the final point when you adopt your 2025 budget. So information on the proposed budget, I included 2024 adopted budget and 2025 proposed budget. So your adopted 2024 budget was $19,503,229. The 2025 proposed budget amount is $22,300,361. The increase from 2024 to 2025 proposed is 14.34%. The 2024 tax levy is 8.428873 million. The proposed tax levy is 10.160898 million. This is a tax levy increase from 24 to 25, proposed at 20.54%. Your 2024 adopted tax rate was 17.26. Your 2025 proposed tax rate is 13.97. This is a tax rate decrease of 19.06%. The amount of funding being utilized from the fund balance in the proposed 2025 budget is $924,500. You can find that in your interfund transfer line. In that is the salary for the safety coordinator, because this is a 3-year salary, so it's one-time funding, and all the one-time maintenance expenses in buildings and grounds, which adds up to $839,500. The senior exemption resolution, which you voted on last time and will vote on again, takes effect for the 2025 tax roll, so the exemption will occur on your 2026 taxes. We're always a year behind when it comes to tax rolls. It will take effect, if the school were to do an exemption, that would take effect with the school year budget. We don't do anything with the school, but that's just a piece of that. So those are the notes that I wanted you all to have, because then you have all of the same calculations, and these are the calculations that the comptroller and I both ran through to make sure they were correct. With that, we'll jump into some of the questions, and that's one of the reasons I'm out here today, is Adam and I will come back and forth on some of these questions. And then, Mayor, if you want follow-ups on each question, does that make sense?
Yeah, there's 11 questions you're working with?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to focus on the 11 questions that were sent via email. As we go through each one of them, we'll pause in between each one for any questions or concerns.
So the first question I have is, if council is to look to remove funding from the budget to change to a 5% levy growth, what would need to be removed from the budget, and what would this do to the tax rate? Adam, you want to talk for a minute?
Sure. Okay, so the 24 tax levy, as we mentioned before, was just over 8.4 million. A 5% increase from that would come out to $421,444, and that would make the 25 levy 8.8 million. So it would go from 8.4 to 8.8. And let's see, a reduction, that would be a reduction from what was proposed in the original budget proposal of 1.3 million. Tax rate, instead of the 13.97 that is proposed, the tax rate would go to 12.16 per thousand.
Pretty cut and dry answer. Thank you very much. Questions, concerns? Okay, it's understandable. I appreciate it. Let's go on to question 2.
So question 2 talks about where can we look to see areas to reduce the budget. So this proposed budget, when we crafted it, was focused on catching up on maintenance and other efforts. There are not new initiatives, there are not new things in here to do. It's not expanding services, it's not increasing in services. I just want to be clear on that. We've really not reached a place yet where we're proactively looking to expand and increase. Instead, what we're doing is looking at how to maintain and catch up to maintenance of effort versus basically just catching up. If we were to reduce the budgets, it can be done. We may reduce some of the speed of the workloads, some of the service offerings that we have. In each of your departmental budget breakdowns, there are notes that outline the variances between years and purchases between those years. This is the area I would recommend that you review for looking at those reductions. So an example that I'll use your own city council budget. There is an increase in line 1210, which is your department number, 4046, which is the line item number. So when you look at the budget, you'll often see a department number along next to it, and then the line item. So in 4046, which I think is miscellaneous, in the past it was about $500, and there's an extra $2,000 in there. The reason we put that $2,000 in there is often members of city council will have ideas of projects that they want to carry out or try that have not been funded. So things like a celebration or, sorry, Councilor Petropoulos, you're sitting in front of me, the Splash Park program. Not a large expense, but not budgeted. So we included it to at least have that funding earmarked. Those are the kinds of things that are then noted in the notes section. So if you look at the notes, it says this is an increase because this is why. You'll see that in the notes throughout the budget. The other area that you can look at is right at the beginning of your budget book, and I didn't put a note on what page it is, where you can look at expenditures and revenues. So if you look at general fund summary on page 5 and general fund summary on page 6, you can see the large buckets and where the variances are. From there, you can then dive more into those departmental budgets. Adam, I don't know if you have any follow-ups on this one. If not, that's okay.
I do not.
Questions, comments? So for me, similar to what you mentioned at the beginning, if we wanted to add or take anything out of the budget, we would make that motion live on the floor, get a second, have discussion, and then call it to a vote.
Correct.
Okay? Great. Moving on to number 3, if there's no hands being raised.
Great. So what would a reduction be to the proposed budget if we did not surpass the property tax cap? I'm going to give it back to you for numbers, Adam.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Guess I know which ones are
Can
mine.
I just ask you why you're doing that? Because, I'm gonna look at, the formula was a little crazy on page 89.
That's really why I
Is
gave
that
it
why
to
I'm,
Yeah.
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna talk about page 89?
Kind of, yeah.
Briefly.
I mean,
Okay.
it all references from page 89, which, for those of you watching at home, is the tax cap calculation.
I think the interesting part for me was there's a single asterisk, a double asterisk, a triple asterisk,
Yeah.
a quadruple asterisk, and a quintuplet.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things going on there, which is why in years past we've kind of looked at the tax cap override as sort of an insurance thing to just let's override it and then keep that separate from the actual budget and the tax rate itself, just because it is such a large formula. That being said, the current proposed tax levy, $10,160,898. Our tax cap limit is $9,852,787, which to get to that limit, it's a reduction in the current budget of $308,000 roughly. That tax, in doing that, it would bring our tax rate from that 13.97 per thousand that's been proposed to a 13.54 per thousand. So it does bring it down a little bit. Again, that kind of gives you an idea of, $300,000 in reductions gets you, 43 cents basically off of the tax rate. So with that large formula, we've got 9.8 million to summarize. To stay within the cap, we're at 10.1. It's roughly 308,000 to get to that cap.
Comments, discussion?
I have,
Council Peeler?
I have a quick comment. The tax cap year after year, and this is, I think, my 6th budget now, it comes up as a contentious topic because not a lot of people understand why we lift it. Like the state sets it, but why do you lift it year after year? And the reason for that is the state is, in my opinion, financially oppressive, and they coerce us into doing so. And a lot of our funding that offsets our taxes comes from state aid. And the state will withhold much of that aid if we exceed the tax cap even up $1. So if we don't vote to remove that tax cap, we will be penalized by the state, and then the retroactive dominoes will start to fall, and then all of our contributions will have to go up to make up for this lack of state aid that funds our taxes. So we do this as, like our comptroller said, we do this as an insurance policy so that the state gives us the carrot. All right, so that's kind of why we do it. The state basically holds it over our head and to do this. And only the elected body can lift the tax cap because it is a budgetary decision that we are authorized to make. So I have no intention in raising our taxes past the tax cap, as I have year after year stated clearly, but I understand the financial responsibility to lift it, to make sure that we are not, our allowance isn't withheld by our parents.
Council Brennan and Council Lavin.
Good point, Counselor Peeler. Amy, can you tell us, perhaps in round numbers, what the value of that state aid might be or has been in any kind of historical sense? Plus or minus 50 cents?
So
It's tight window you're working with, there.
I was going to say Adam's on it right now.
So roughly 2.5 million. And that's not to say that if there was an issue with the tax cap that we would lose all 2.5 million.
I appreciate that.
It's just, there's different, a good example I'll say is, not to open an old wound, but when dispatch moved to the county, we had to override the tax cap because it was a service that we had lost to another government agency. And so the state's expectation was that city would lower the taxes by the amount of savings.
Okay, and
So it was overridden for that reason as well.
was the 2.5 million you quoted in this past year and in past 12 months in round numbers, or is,
Yeah, so it looks like in 2023 it was around 2.7 million, and that can fluctuate based on different state and federal grants and
Alright.
what programs are still out there. But it's, I would say, 2 to 2.5 million is the standard each year for the city of Geneva.
thank you.
Yeah.
Council Lavin.
That there's no sort of Damocles hanging us if we stay below the spending level.
No.
Right. So if we just stay below 9 point whatever that is, there's no threat. There's no loss of anything. It's just
Correct.
that we don't have the self-control to keep taxes below that level. We get spanked.
Yep.
That's good spanking.
So my question would be, say we chose to reduce the budget by 308,000, down below that 9.8 number. Is that a guarantee that we wouldn't override the tax? I just see all these asterisks, so I get a little hesitant, that's why.
I would say no. I guess I always looked at it as two separate items. So there's the tax cap, which is kind of the state's way of saying you should try not to raise taxes too much if you can help it, right? Or else you got to override this thing, and then you have to have a public hearing, and you get more people involved. So I look at that as its own thing, and then council managing the tax rate or the tax levy kind of separately, saying, okay, that's a good foundation, a good starting point is the tax cap number. So if you want to try to stay around that, that's what you work towards. And then I've always just had the feeling of let's override anyway, but make it known that we're underneath it, just because it can be years later where a pilot payment wasn't made and now you're being penalized for that.
That's also a reason some governments will rescind their tax cap. So they'll do it at the beginning of the budget, they'll override the tax cap, they'll do their calculation, and then at the end, they'll rescind that resolution. You don't have to rescind that resolution, and it gives you that extra allowance to say, we're confident that we didn't override it and we did our due diligence. And at the same time, if we did make a mistake or a pilot didn't come in, something shifted, we still are clear that we were okay with that piece.
Good
That's
explanation.
more of like a political kind of showing. Right.
Anybody else?
Yes, just a
Councilor Rowland.
question on that. Adam, do you know what pilots came off this year? Because we're losing 700,000 in
Yeah.
pilot payments.
I think there's an appendix in here,
Yeah, I
right?
thought-
Yeah, it's
Because
the
that
very
would
last
revert over
page.
to the general tax,
Yeah.
which would mean that we need to get another 700,000. We need to find another pilot.
So if you look at page 96, it shows all of our current pilots, and you can see where the reductions in the pilots. So you can see there's some reduced pilot payments coming in for a few of these. I don't see any coming completely off.
I mean, that just seemed like a lot of money,
What,
Which-
without anything coming off.
what line item is that?
It's in your calculation for tax cap.
Oh,
Let's see.
Yeah, I don't see a reduction in pilot.
yeah, I don't either. It also, we'll have to relook at that. I always forget.
Yeah, because that's one of the ones that would
Is it?
screw you up.
Pilots, that's a formula that confuses me.
But that's in a different
dramatically.
year.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Usually, the towns pass the tax cap
Yeah.
because you never know what the state's gonna do when they
Right.
figure this out.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll look at that, 24 calculation. Seems
Yeah,
a
it
bit
just
high.
was,
Yeah.
usually the,
Some of these are variable, but.
yeah, unless something comes off, usually
yeah.
the pilot number goes up.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah,
rerun
let
it
me-
just to
let
make
me
sure.
run through
Just-
those.
Just a question, that's all.
Yep, no, it's a good question.
No, definitely, good catch.
Yeah, we'll make sure to bring that up next week for you.
I've looked through this budget multiple times and didn't see that, Counselor, so I appreciate it.
on page 96.
96 is the.
Yeah, 96 doesn't indicate the same thing as the tax formula does.
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Move on to number 4.
Sure. What did the senior exemption do to the budget? And that we put into the front page. The senior exemption resolution, when you pass that, will not impact 2025's budget. It won't impact budget in general. It'll impact your total assessed value. But it won't impact anything in your proposed because it'll happen with the 2025 roll, which we then use to create the 2026 budget.
Just a comment, because when you say that, I just want to make sure all counselors understand. Kind of the formula with assessed value, and
Mhm.
then, and you can help me with this.
Yep.
And then sales tax. So this was something I had to learn over a period of time, but assessed value for taxable entities is one thing, assessed value for sales tax, for property tax is one thing, for sales tax is another. Can you explain that real quick? Right, because we take the full assessment for tax, or sales
Remember
tax?
Sales tax again?
Oh, for how much sales, I
Yeah.
got you. I can follow you now. For our sales tax agreement that we have with the county, we use our total value. So, and then for,
Even nonprofit stuff that's
Yeah.
off our
Yes.
property tax.
yes, we use all value. When we're talking about your budgeting purposes, then you use taxable assessed value. So two different valuations.
Thank you. So there is a value to even the nonprofits
There
on
is,
the assessed value for the sales tax in the county.
correct,
Thank you.
correct.
Okay.
And we are currently auditing the nonprofits for the 2025 tax roll. This is something that we do regularly, but it is time for another nonprofit audit where we look at all of those properties to see their use and how they are contributing.
They were included in the newest assessment too. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Great. Number 5.
All right, so what has been the growth of the tax levy over the past 10 years? And even though this is numbers, I'll take it because I know you're working on that other piece. So in 2014, we started with 2014 and we shared a chart at your last meeting, or a graph actually, that showed this. But the tax levy in 2014 was 6.5 million. And then you come ahead to 2024 and you're at 8.4 million. So from 6.5 to 8.4.
Is there, and this is, I probably should have thought about this before, but in different years that we did assessment updates, you know, we talk about our current assessment update and how it impacted the percentage. Is there any relationship to previous years with assessment increases or assessment revaluations? And it might not be something you can answer tonight. I'm perfectly okay with that. It just popped into my head.
Why don't we put it on for next, so
perfect,
that way you guys can, because I can look at this graph and it would probably be more helpful for you to look at this
Yeah.
graph. All right.
Or just to have numbers, you know, based on those years that we did reassessments. Questions, comments on number 5? Okay, number 6.
Okay. So this question is, why is there such a large increase in the Public Works 7110 budget on page 60? That is our buildings and grounds budget. And so a big part of this increase is actually that one-time funding that we talked about from fund balance. And those are there's two things contributing to that. One is, in the past, departments would put some of their improvements in their departmental budget, and some would be in the buildings and grounds budgets. And so it would be kind of spread out, and who was responsible for those repairs would also be spread out. What we did is put cost centers in the buildings and grounds budget. So a cost center for City Hall, cost center for public safety building, lakefront, all of the different facilities that we have. And then in there are improvements to those facilities. And what we talked about earlier, the $839,500, that's a large increase in that budget because those are all those facility improvements. There's also equipment in that budget and some other pieces.
So I know counselors have put questions forward on this page because it is a topic of discussion that we're going to address in detail next week based on the timing of those questions being submitted. I just did, when I was doing my book calculations, it was $1.184,500,000, and I will thank staff and the city manager because on page 61, there are detailed explanations of all those increases and what they entail. Questions or comments on that one?
I want to make a comment that when we were tearing this apart, I was kind of surprised to learn that our fund balance transfers in the budget are noted as revenue.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's counterintuitive since the fund balance is often or almost always generated by the previous year's tax levy. So most people don't consider revenue old taxes unspent.
Mm-hmm.
And now I understand that it's still a credit in the ledger, like it's a positive number.
Right.
But to put that into our revenue, you know, when counselors talk about how we're looking to increase revenues across the city, that's generally, we don't really mean let's spend old tax savings, right? So I think that to me was a very intellectually confusing realization because I was looking to spend down the fund balance, which I knew we were kind of high, but then when I realized that the fund balance was noted in our revenue, it was already gone in the budget, right? Close to $1 million of our savings account from our past tax collection is being spent down and counted as revenue in our budget. So really, in my mind, that's actually our tax total collection of the 22 million or in change. That's really 23 million, because we've spent $1 million of our savings account to get to that 22, right? And that's not how people budget. And I think that's a really tricky way to put it because it's not like this is coming in from fees. It's not coming in from permits. It's not coming in from agreements and pilots. It's coming in from old savings account. So I think the mayor has requested this in previous council meetings. It's almost like it would be very beneficial to us as the governing body who looks through this budget to see highlighted areas that are intended for fund balance expenses rather than, you know what I mean, like earmarked for fund balance,
Right.
right? Because I think that would help us understand that these are not reoccurring payments, but these are one-time equipment costs, which we understand we've made fund balance adjustments in the past. Now, does that mean when we reconcile our budgets from the previous years, all those budget decisions that we make throughout the year to spend a little bit of fund balance, does that get retroactively added to revenue the previous year?
So it'll always go back into that interfund transfer. So that's
In the revenue,
in the revenue side.
wow.
And so I do want to say this is all regulated. It's not.
I understand.
It's not an Amy and Adam decision.
Because I went through 6 other budgets and found interfund transfers.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just don't define that in my mind as revenue.
Yeah, and it does get to be a little complicated. And one of the things that when we create the tax rate, tax levy, and you do the calculations, you add fund balance as the last revenue before you do that calculation. And I know I'm looking at Councilor Gilat because he and I walked through that calculation, and you had kind of the same question about, well, why do you add that fund balance in? Because it's seen as a revenue according to
No,
these principles,
It's a plus on the ledger, I get it.
right?
It's just when I do my budget at home, I
Yeah.
don't factor in my savings account when I talk about new income.
Right.
That's old income.
Do you have a savings account?
I have a little bit.
I'm looking forward to one.
I have a little bit. It's hard work to keep it and not touch it.
Forget it.
It's hard work with 3 kids to not touch it.
Yeah, believe me, when they go to college, it gets worse. Okay. Any more questions on that, which we diverted a little bit to a different subject? Okay. Let's go to number 7.
All right. What would the percent change of the budget be if we added the community engagement coordinator? Adam, I'll go to you.
All right. So estimated cost of the position is $95,000 for 2025. New levy amount would be 10.2 million and some change. Tax rate would go from that 13.97 we keep talking about to 14.10. So up about 13 cents there per thousand. Change to the overall proposed budget, 0.42%. Change to the proposed levy, 0.93%. Again, 95,000 for the position in total.
Comments, discussion?
95,000 would change that many percentage points on those different line items?
Remember, it's 0. So it's less than 0.5% or less than 1%.
Okay, that's better. Thank you.
Yeah.
But that's also based on the $10.1 million proposed collection.
Yep.
Yep, it's-
If it was 8.5 or 8.9, it would be closer to a 1.3% increase.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Gillette?
Just to clarify, the 95,000, that's benefits and everything, the whole package?
That's starting, I believe, not January 1st. It would be starting probably mid first quarter.
So what would the total annual salary be for that position for a full year?
It would probably be about 100,000. Usually positions, we tend to think about 100 to 105,000 for each position.
Man, that used to be 78 just a few years ago.
Did.
So did the price of milk and fruit and,
I
Okay.
know.
ready?
Perfect.
Moving on. Number 8.
All right. What is the estimated fund balance expected to roll over in 2025? And Adam just said he'll take it because it's a lot of numbers.
So this one is moving constantly, these numbers. So just some caution there. So first I'll just go through the numbers. General fund, 4.2 million, water fund, 1 million, sewer fund, 1.2 million in change, obviously. So that's what we're estimating as of right now. It's still, a couple months left of the year. A lot of things can happen. It could get better. It could get worse. Keep in mind, those numbers are before the 2025 allocation. So in round numbers, let's say $1 million is budgeted to come out of the general fund balance. You take $1 million off this number here. So this is just what we're expecting to start 2025 with, pending, anything that can really happen.
And you'll get all of these numbers and these notes in the morning. We'll make sure you get them all so that way you have all of this information.
So, Mike, a quick follow-up. So, for the general fund, for the general taxes, not the water or sewer, if we're about 4.1, 4.2 now, I'm confused why we wouldn't be rolling over roughly that figure minus the $900,000 that's in the interfund transfer. Or are we going to be doing that?
That's what it is.
Okay, so there's calculus there. It's like
Yep.
in parentheses minus 900K.
Yep, exactly.
Yes.
Give or take a K. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't like thinking in the dollars. I think in the bigger numbers.
Well, your brain's calculating pretty quick, so.
Well, you just move the decimal points and you get bigger, rounder numbers.
I'm with you, but I went to a Catholic high school, Mr. Lavin over here.
I
so-
went to Catholic school. Sister Kathleen, shout out.
I was tortured to learn math very efficiently.
She might be watching.
Okay, moving on to, where are we? Number 9.
Where are the top 5 spending increases overall and then levy related? So I broke it down a little bit further. Our largest increase is salary and benefits. Employee benefits, if you look on page 12 of the budget, you can see there's about a $750,000 increase. There's also about $500,000 increase in salaries, which does include, and we'll talk a little bit about those new positions in the next question. The other main area is just the general increase in cost of doing business. I wish I could point to and say, this one project is what's pushing us over. It's not one project. It's the overall cost for day-to-day materials, things like salt, machinery, technology, a lot more technology. On all of these areas, we're seeing increases anywhere from 12 to 20%. And so the cost of doing business, unfortunately, is a big piece of that. Another piece is continuing to catch up on building maintenance and infrastructure maintenance. I already mentioned the buildings and grounds, where that fund balance amount is. Repairs to facilities like roof repairs, replacing the gazebo, replacing windows, things like that, all are in there, as well as road repairs. One of the things that we have committed to doing is, if we are replacing the roads, is to replace or at least clean up and fix anything underneath the roads. That hasn't always been the case. And so we experience things like breaks, in our pipes, things like that. So we want to make sure that if we're replacing that, we're moving forward. Equipment costs is another area. So we have the equipment replacement schedule, and we have funding that we try to keep in that line. However, we always kind of surpass what's available in that equipment replacement line. And so there is additional equipment, trucks, cars, things like that. One area that's not a huge driver, but I just want to call your attention to, is there's an imposed increase that nearly doubles our animal control calculation.
I have that highlighted.
So that is an interesting increase. I see all of you like, yes, I noticed that doubled.
Anything that doubles is a red flag.
So that is not something that we control locally. We work with the county, and they allocate us, or they give us what that number will be. Previous calculation was done differently, so they shifted how they do the calculation, and this year the Board of Supervisors adopted a new policy where they do it based on population size and an estimate for how many dogs are in that population. I will say that my fellow city manager in Canandaigua and I called this to question a little bit in our conversation with the county administrator when they first approached us with this concept, because in a city, often we don't have as many animals in apartment units and other places because they're not allowed. They still went with that calculation that goes by population, and so we saw a large increase. We saw it double. So while we're still at 30, I think it's around $30,000, it's significant. One of the things that the clerk, though, has said that she'll commit to doing is also making sure that on the other side, we are making sure dogs are licensed, so we have some offsetting revenue on that. We don't have offsetting revenue on that total amount, though, at this point. So those are kind of the big areas. And again, I know this question was more looking for where are the big funding, like is there a big bucket of money? Outside of capital and equipment, there's not a large spending pocket.
Comments, questions? Counselor Gilat?
Amy, you mentioned repairs of, like roof repairs, windows, etc. Is this due to previous councils pushing that forward because of budget issues, or, I mean, enlighten me a little bit on this, because is it a one and done kind of thing, or is these repairs constant?
So it's a little of both. I think some of these things, sometimes what we've done is band-aided things where we needed to fix and replace. And so one of the things that we continue to do is look at how bad the damages are to those things. So you'll see roof repair. One of the conversations is when we get those quotes, is it a repair or do we need to talk something bigger? And if it's bigger, then let's have that conversation. Let's not just jump to repair if it needs to replace, because I'd rather not repair 9 times if I can replace once. One of the conversations that we have is about the windows. So the windows are here in City Hall. We have some funding to begin that project this year. We'll need additional funding for 2 reasons. One, it's not only the windows, it's the facade surrounding the windows. So if you walk in a lot of the offices, you will see these really nice Xerox copied signs that say do not open windows. The reason is when you open the windows, the top, so they're meant to be able to move down and up. The top will come down, and once that latch is done, they'll continue to do that. So we lose heat, we lose air conditioning, things like that. The fix to that, unfortunately, is replacing the windows. And so we've started to work with that. At the same time, the facade, it's an older building. And you'll notice that there's netting around the top of the building now. Those are things that may have been occurring, but weren't at the level that we were concerned at the point we are now. And so that's a big piece of it, is diving deeper onto that. And then that continues down into streets and all of our other facilities, is making sure that we're not just patching, but we're fixing.
Councilor Peeler.
I think those are big ticket items, and we've been on this council now for half a decade, and I don't remember us tossing around those topics as how are we going to plan for this? How are we going to fund this? This is coming down the pike. Let's plan for it now. So I feel like this is a bit of a dam broke, and now we're kind of looking at issues. And with all due respect, council probably isn't encouraged to walk around and check the windows. Right. That's something that should have been brought to our attention. So it is expensive, and when you have to fix your house and you can't necessarily afford to fix it all at one time, you have to do things like what I did when I bought my house. Is we had to fix the front porch the first year, and then we had to fix the back porch 2 years later. So I don't know if we can phase these things, and that's a creative way to do it. I think we all can acknowledge that the renovations might be good, but maybe some creative phasing in those projects would give the taxpayer some relief, looking for the hot items first. I forgot what page it was on, but I noticed in the Public Works and DPW sections, there was the rebuilding of Cherry Street, the reconstruction of Cherry Street, and that was nearly $2 million.
Yep.
So that's a big ticket item. That's more than $700,000 for salary. So is there a way we can kind of move that around too, and either phase it or?
Yep. So I'm gonna jump in on this one. We'll talk about this, I think, again, and not next week. DPW will actually be the following week. But so what you're talking about is a capital improvement project, and that's where some of these projects that we're talking about that are now moving into your general fund budget are coming from, for 2 reasons. One of the things that you asked me to do was help reduce debt. And sometimes we were bonding for things like window replacement in your capital project. And instead of doing that, we're going to try to use what I call cash for capital, which is your fund balance, to pay for that. So your window replacement actually was in a capital plan at one point, and then we pulled that out because we can phase it over time. And when we use fund balance, it doesn't increase taxes. It's already funding that has been taken and used. And so when you're talking about Cherry Street and Elmwood, those are in your capital projects plans. Design costs are in your main budget. The other actual projects are in the capital plans. And I will say that, and Adam, you probably may remember this project has been on the books for about 4 or 5 years, because that's how the capital plan project works. When you look at it, it goes out up to 5 years. And you've kind of pushed it down the road saying, we think in 2025 we need to address this street. In 2026 we're going to go for this street, and so on. When you look at what's in your budget, though, it's not that total cost because you're bonding on that. And so you're taking out basically a loan to pay that. So you're only seeing a part of that cost in your total budget.
It's still a big ticket item.
It's a huge ticket item.
Right.
It is.
That's why I tell my neighbors, they probably hate me, but I said the last street in Geneva I ever want done is the street next to my house.
And a reconstruction is to, just so that the public knows, is not the same thing as milling and paving.
Right.
That
Right.
street's gonna get dug
Yeah.
Sort of like Lafayette.
dug out.
Lafayette just got, you know.
So I'm wondering about the public response to that as opposed to what many residents might feel are not areas that should be first in line to get dug out and fixed. Because when we dig that out, we're gonna redo lines too.
Yep. We're gonna talk a little deeper about that.
Is that another
next-
day?
Yeah,
Yep.
yep.
All right, sorry to jump
No,
the
it's all
gun.
right.
You're
It's
okay.
all right. Those are good concerns. Council Brennan, did you have your hand up? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move on to,
Do we have any kind of guarantee on our windows? Those windows aren't that old.
No, we do not.
When were they
So
last
what-
replaced?
Oh, maybe 10, 15
It
years
was,
ago.
wasn't it, I think when we were doing the elevator,
No,
Yeah.
it was before the elevator.
was it?
It was, yeah.
It was when we moved
Oh,
next door.
I think that's like
So,
09.
however,
blocked it out, I
oh,
don't
had,
know.
would have to be
So
like-
never-
Bottom line is, they're not old.
they're not
Right.
old.
They're not old.
And if you got a drop in them, it's, might be, you know, for 200 grand, we might be able to put somebody on just to fix the windows for a quarter of that.
So we've brought in estimates because it is budgeted. There's some in this year and some in next. And we brought in different contractors. We put it out to bid to go through what that looks like. And it's not, again, it's not just the windows, it's the facade on the outside too that has to be done.
Which we had done before.
number 10.
All right. Where are the new staff positions located and a little more detail on those? So in this budget is an additional 1.5 FTEs. FTEs, full-time equivalents, as I mentioned in the budget presentation back in September, are a little challenging sometimes because of, depending on who you're talking to, we count people differently. And so the 0.5 FTE is in ITS, or Information Technology Services, for a second network analyst. So when you look at how much we pay for in IT currently, we pay for one FTE, which is 2 people. When you look at our payroll, there are 2 people on our payroll schedule because we contract with Canandaigua and they pay us for both of the half of both of those employees. So we count it as one FTE because that's what we're paying for. But when you look at payroll, you're paying for 2 and then getting reimbursed. So the 0.5 for the network analyst is a half of person of time here in the city of Geneva. When you look at their budget, you're counting 3 FTEs at that point because you're getting 3 full people, and the city of Geneva pays for 1.5, and the city of Canandaigua would pay for 1.5.
So, I don't want, if there's more to that, I'll let you finish.
But she's gonna talk about the other.
Yeah, that's fine.
FTE,
I'll
yeah.
bank the question.
All right. So the other 1 FTE that got us to 1.5 additional people is a full-time equivalent, fully paid for by the city of Geneva, fully a city of Geneva employee, who would be in Department of Public Works as an administrative assistant. They currently have 1 administrative assistant. This would add to that. Code enforcement does have a 0.5 administrative assistant that they share with fire, but this would add another full-time there, with this position being focused on many things within DPW, but a large focus would be on FEMA reimbursement and cataloging that and working through that, and then working with all of our working supervisors. So when we talk about the director of Public Works then has division directors, they're all working supervisors. And what that term means is they are doing the work as well as supervising. And so this would be a person to help them with all of kind of the administrative tasks behind that. So that's where the 1.5 FTE comes in. I do want to just call out 2 other positions that have been asked about. The safety coordinator, that is a position that is in this current year budget. We went out for that, did not successfully fill that position. We did use fund balance to do that because we were looking for a 3-year position to get our safety program up and running, and then we would divide that back out through the departments. That's in this budget as well, in the 2025 budget. Again, it's still funded with fund balance, however, and it would be a 3-year recurring. The other position changes that can be a little confusing is that we had a position in 2024 that was shared between the assessor / finance and planning and economic development. That person found another position, and in discussions with that, that's when we started sharing assessor services with the city of Canandaigua. Now, different on that, our assessor is also a city of Geneva employee. We pay for half of her salary and get reimbursed for the other half. The assistant to her that we put the resolution forward at the last council meeting will remain a city of Canandaigua employee. And so we're paying half of his salary through what's called an extra helpline. It doesn't show in our salary, but there's an extra helpline that pays for his salary.
Oh, I saw that. I think that was like 50K.
Yeah. And that's a rough estimate as we were starting to build it on his benefits, because the city of Canandaigua budget process is a month behind ours. And so we put that in and we'll have a better estimate. At the same time, what we did with the other half of that position, because again, we're sharing that now, so it's only a half position. The other half of the position is in the Planning and Economic Development Department and is our grants coordinator. The grants coordinator is a full-time, it's a one person who's working currently 30 hours, but will be at 35 hours by midpoint next year. They're using funding from a lot of our grants, give you administrative funding, and so we're filling out that position, not with local dollars, but with grant dollars.
So I have Counselor Peeler and then Counselor Petropoulos.
So my question is, if the total salary that we see on some of these shared employees, example of our IT, we're on our budget, we carry the full burden on our line, but then in somewhere in revenues, there's a reimbursement from Canandaigua?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's a half. If you take that salary and divide it by half, roughly,
Right.
that's what is the local cost, and then the other half comes from Canandaigua.
So I feel like that's another modification of our total, of our total revenues, because it's, I don't want to say it's misrepresented, but it's not the whole picture, right? It's like, this is another one of these areas that there'd be an asterisk or a color code, be like, hey, by the way, reference this on this page, it's directly funded with this. Because a lot of our revenue that we get is not earmarked, right? This is earmarked revenue, right? So it's being directly applied to a specific position. And I think earmarked revenue is a little bit different to try to digest than some of the revenue that just goes into paying for our expenses that gets generally applied for. Because it was shocking for me to do the math, and I was like, wait a minute, $280,000 for 1.5 FTEs. That means that's a lot, but that's not true. It's 3. So when we're adding a 0.5 FTE, we're really adding 1.
Mm-hmm.
But on the budget, if you look at the schedule, it's 3 people.
Right.
So you have to be able to reconcile that the 1.5 that we talk about adding is really shorthand, and we're really adding a full-time position. So there'll be a full-timer that's shared between, right? Because normally you would never pay benefits to a part-timer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not necessarily, we're not just adding a 0.5. We're actually adding a 1. There's going to be a full benefits package. And that's a different employee than adding a half-time employee.
Right, and we're charging those benefits.
To Canandaigua, I get it.
Yep.
I get they're splitting the total bill.
Yes.
It's not like they're just paying the tip.
No.
You know what I mean?
Counselor Petropoulos.
Yes, I'm curious about the safety coordinator position. Are we the only municipality in the county that has one? Canandaigua has one.
I don't know if Canandaigua has a safety
I know
coordinator.
the county does.
The
But that's
county does. I don't know if Canandaigua has a full-time safety coordinator.
So my question would be, I mean, I remember going to the county safety coordinator thing. That was mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
But above and beyond that, what are the benefits of having this position, and how will it yield, for example, lower insurance costs? Or if they go through this program, does that prevent them from suing the city, or whatever, that kind of thing?
Sure. So I can give, because this is someone that would fit in multiple. So we have had a safety coordinator, and on the books, we have to have a safety coordinator at all times. Should we have, in the for-profit world, you have OSHA. In the government world, you have PESH. We also have OSHA too, where we get a couple regulations. So the safety coordinator, the reason it's one-time funded for 3 years is to set up and not recreate the program. We had a very talented safety coordinator who did it as part of a position as an add-on, and built that program. That person retired, gave a lot of information, and also said, you need someone to come in to really handle this as a person. As far as insurance rates, things like that, I don't know that it would have that direct correlation. More, it's to take all of the information and bring it together. And we had a lot of discussion about it. It does not mean that we are unsafe. It just means having that person that can work through all of the regulations. If we asked our employees to do a process and they didn't feel that it was a safe process, this is an individual that can walk through all of that and make sure that we're following that, and also can coordinate with the county. Currently, we do work with the county as well, and they have a new safety coordinator. I don't know if he's so new now, but he was last year, that we work closly with. So it just adds to our resources and makes sure that our program is at the level it needs to be. So that was the vision, and that's also why it's not an ongoing position.
Council Grimaldi?
How much are we paying our safety coordinators right now? Because every department seems to have one. Fire department has one. I mean, so we're paying all these people.
So if we have any stipends out there, they're less than $2,000 of stipend, but we don't have that many stipends right now.
Used to be a bunch. And well, I just know
There used to be a
fire
bunch.
department just named a new safety person.
They did. And so you have to have a safety committee no matter what we do, and every department has to have a representative. But we have not done stipends for a majority of them.
Okay, I just know I used to go out with the guys from the sewer plant, so for their safety meetings.
Yeah, I can't compliment a retired individual who carried this responsibility for many years. And there's a lot of discussion about this position in the previous council. And I think the goal, as Amy was mentioning, was to develop procedures and policies and get them solidified in place so that all departments could leverage those policies and procedures. And we could just have a short-term, 3-year position that would carry us forward.
Yeah.
Well,
Fire chief used to do a lot of that.
I'm still not in favor of this position. Me personally, we've operated forever without it, and we've gotten by. And I wasn't in favor of it before. I know it passed. I think allocating some funds to someone to be the coordinator, who is an existing employee, like we did in the past, was the way to go. If it, the search failed, we didn't find anyone. This might be an opportunity.
So those are opportunities that you can make motions for at any time throughout the budget process.
I'm processing it.
Yep, no problem.
I don't
Tonight
want to
doesn't
jump.
have
I don't
be
want to.
tonight.
I don't want to jump the gun,
Yep.
and I also don't. Like Amy said, this isn't about. We have a generally unsafe environment here. This is. Forgive me for being suspicious. To me, this is just bureaucracy, and when we're adding a layer, I don't think we need to. We're a small community. I've never found, me personally, that bureaucracy is quite efficient, except in spending money. They're very efficient at that. So that's just my own personal take on that.
Council Petropoulos.
So let me get this straight. We did do a search, and we did not find someone to fill that position.
Correct. We did a search. It was right in the spring, and we did not find someone during that search. There were some suggestions on how to improve our search. We also did the search when some other municipalities were doing a similar search and were paying slightly more than we were.
Thank you.
You interested, Council?
Solution is more money.
I said, you interested? You can always resign. Okay, number 11.
Number 11, where did O and I go? And Office of Neighborhood Initiatives. It's interesting. Office of Neighborhood Initiatives, if you look at the charter, is still under Planning and Economic Development because we didn't change the charter when we created it. We went back to calling it Planning and Economic Development. It's still under the same department code, which is 8689. That is the only change to that.
Comments, questions?
No, it was a good move.
Okay, so we added a couple resolutions, but before we do that, I've asked for a couple of motions. The first one is a motion to add comprehensive plan update for 2025, $75,000 in the city manager's budget. This would be a one-time request with a full amount coming from the fund balance. I think it's important since it was 2018, since we completed this comprehensive plan. There was a lot of community involvement in there. There's been a lot of discussion about the comprehensive plan in the last 2 years, both in the paper, out in the community, and on this council floor. There's been a lot of references to the comprehensive plan. I just think it's severely outdated, and I think that involving the community again will be critical. So I'm going to make a motion to add the comprehensive plan update for 2025 at $75,000 to come from the fund balance. Second by Council Petropoulos. Discussion. Council Peeler and then Council Brennan.
It would be highly ironic if we're sitting here trying to trim down the budget and we're adding things to the budget. So I want to be clear. This is an amendment for this year's active budget, and that has no impact on the 2025 budget. Correct? You're requesting a fund balance expenditure of this year, to
One-time
fund
expense. Yep.
of this to this year's budget.
To the 2025 budget.
Oh,
Yeah, it's 2025 budget, adding $75,000 from the fund balance, which does not impact the tax rate.
it slightly decreases our revenue on the revenue side, though, because it decreases our fund balance.
Correct. Council Brennan?
What prompts this initiative? Give me some examples, perhaps, where the current comprehensive plan might be outdated or lacking.
Well, and since 2018, a lot of things have happened, both in the nation and in the community, and I think it's important that we take that look. Going through COVID had a serious impact on our businesses, had a serious impact on the total look of the city. So I think it's important that we kind of refresh that and take a look at not just 2025, but things you have mentioned in the future, a forward look also.
Sure.
You know?
Okay.
Mayor, if I may too, this is something that, when you look at the budget book, there are things that I did not recommend. And so this is something that was in the city manager's, in my mind and some other staffs, that I didn't recommend in the budget. So that's what prompted at least that resolution, was something that was in there with the estimated cost of $75,000.
And that's estimated.
Can I ask a question?
Council Grimaldi, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna put 75,000 in here, but if we go to do it and it doesn't cost the city anything, the 75 just goes away, right?
Correct.
Because, and I understand, looking at the comprehensive plan, it wasn't done really well. We really need that too.
Council Evans, your hand up?
Yeah, this is, we just had a plan for economic development, which is sort of at the front line of what needs to be happening here. This strikes me as more paralysis by analysis, and while we're facing a 20% tax increase, and the last comprehensive plan was a triumph of hope over experience in terms of impact on this community. I just don't, I think this is not the year to do it, to start extra expenditures, although if you want to, the manager wants to point out 75 elsewhere that she's not going to use in her budget to use this instead, I think that's within her discretion. But
It's not my recommendation. Council Peeler?
I think we can be smart and do this right. So if we do this right and have a zero impact on the budget, we would be adding an expense somewhere on the expense ledger for the 75,000 estimated. But then in the interfund transfers on the revenue side, that number would go up too. Okay, so That's not a bad plan.
Money is money.
No, I know, but that's a zero impact.
Not on these people.
Well, are you saying I don't pay taxes?
Councilors, let's,
No,
let, one
I'm
at a
just
time,
saying.
one at a time, we don't need.
I was the one. I said,
Listen,
these are.
okay, let's get right down to the brass tacks of our fund balance. The state mandates that we keep a 13 to 15% amount in our fund balance, and right now we have a 19.1. So that means the reduction back down to statement. What that means we've been no offense, all due respect, we've been overtaxed and then stuck into a savings account. Now, me as a taxpayer, I expect that money to be spent that fiscal year. I don't give money to the city to throw into a piggy bank. So that means we've got money in the bank. So bringing that number down to 15%, which is pretty much the $900,000, that's fiscally responsible, and I appreciate that, to bring that $900,000 out of the fund balance. An additional $75,000 would be bringing it still within the 14.9 instead of 15.0 state flex. Am I right or am I wrong?
It would be very close. Yeah.
Right. So it's a fractional increase in fund balance spending when we realistically have a lot more wiggle room in the fund balance to spend it down. And that's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a mathematical fact based on how the state likes to keep us in a fund balance cushion. I also want to remind, and this is something I learned this year, and it didn't wrap my head around it. If we increase the overall budget, it also forces us to keep a fatter piggy bank by the state's mandates. So it's a good idea. It's a good idea to keep our taxes down. I'm right, because
that
listen,
percentage, yeah.
yeah,
is
12
more
to 15,
dollars.
yeah, 12, yeah, 13 to 15% of $1 million is a different number than 13 to 15% of $1.5 million. So this spending of this money is not a bad idea. If that's the way we're going to budget this, then I support it.
It's spending it to reduce taxes on the levy is also spending it at the target that needs
So
to be
wait,
done.
just, I understand the back and forth, but
right.
Yeah.
this is October 9th. We have October 16th, October 23rd, and October 30th. And I would expect, based on the emails I'm seeing going back and forth and the conversations this council is having, that there's gonna be other adjustments made to this budget. So this isn't an end-all right here. This is just my suggestion and recommendation for a change to the current budget. I'm expecting other councilors to bring motions forward also. I have another one after this one too.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Steve, do we know where the 75,000 came from?
General fund is where I'm asking it to come.
I know, but I mean.
What-
What makes up that
$75,000.
number?
'Cause
Yeah.
when I inquired, the guys were 5,000 or less.
So this is talking to a few consultants that would run the entire process. It would involve, similar to the previous comprehensive plan, but more detail and more in depth, because when you do a comprehensive plan, you need to involve many, many community stakeholders. One of the reasons that I did want to look at the comprehensive plan as well is because it does position us to get prepared for our next DRI initiative, which can't be in the same areas of downtown revitalization, but can be in additional areas and can do new projects. And so that's why I looked at it. And that's where this price point comes in, is having someone run all of those meetings, having them run the engagement process, and taking all of that on. So it wouldn't be done by city staff. It would be done by an outside group.
Because comprehensive plans are normally very general, really
Right.
vague. And that's where ours has a problem right now.
Yeah, this is a little more
Restrictive.
detailed than that. This,
Yeah, but the key is you don't want your comprehensive plan to be detailed. Because me, as a business person, coming into Geneva, is gonna pick that plan up.
right.
And if it spells out, well, we wanna do this kind of building on Exchange Street, that's what you gotta do. Now, all of a sudden, I'm
Yeah.
not coming because I don't have that kind of building.
Yeah.
You don't want that kind of thing in your comprehensive plan. And that's the problem with that plan right now, is people are looking at it and they're saying, this isn't general enough for me. My business doesn't fit into this. We want a comprehensive plan that anybody that comes in here and wants to put a business in can fit into that plan.
Right. So on this, again, it would be bringing in experts to do that, to make it general, that have been positioned, who have done that. And it's up to 75,000. That's one of the nice things about fund balance is we would then vet that process and choose the person that, or group that could work well for us.
I just
Hopefully
want,
under 5,000.
I just want to say I really appreciate you saying, oh, sorry.
What, Councilor Brennan? Okay. I know, I thought you were trying.
So, I think if I'm following this right, you did not recommend this for the 2025 budget, but yet it seems to be a necessary step or at least an advisable step to take in order to prepare oneself for future DRI funding. Is this something, in your opinion, that could wait till 25, 26 or 27?
That's why I did not recommend it in the current year. I also didn't use fund balance for it because there may be other things for fund balance. And so that's why I didn't recommend it. When I look, I know the comment was made that I could find 75,000 someplace else. This wasn't as high priority as the other things in my budget at this point.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Peeler.
Yeah, just to follow up to what Pat was talking about, and I appreciate him mentioning the nature of a comprehensive plan because there's a global economic development organization. I forgot what it's called, but they're a global organization and they're dedicated to the economic development of their respective regions. And if you look at their ideology or their ethos, their philosophy of how economic development can be done, one of them in the top rated things that governing bodies can do is remove the restrictions that hinder economic development and investment in communities. So if we're able to do this by modifying the comprehensive plan and updating it to remove perceived restrictions, yeah, let's do it.
Councilor Gilat.
I read it, the old plan, I read it through when I was not on council, and then when I run for council. And a couple of things I saw in there was the approach of revitalizing neighborhoods, making them more attractive for the community, more pride, et cetera, which attracts more people from the outside coming in. And then I thought that plan was kind of outdated when I was reading through it. And a lot of it's in there, and of course, there's some stuff that people don't really want in there as well, but there's just suggestions. But I think this whole council agrees that we don't want to raise taxes. And I think some of the word out is that some of us are bent on doing that, and we're not. We're in a tough time right now. I own a business. We're in a tough time. Expenses are going crazy. And it's hard to keep up. But we got to do what we got to do. But I also like, besides just trying to control taxes and reduce and however approach we take to do that, I also think we need to lay a foundation for future. Instead of doing this roller coaster thing, which the past couple councils have done, I think we need to lay a foundation where we can grow as well. Control things, control expenses, but also lay the foundation so there's growth potential there. Or we're going to keep doing I hate using this term because I heard it last 4 years, kick the can down the road. None of us want to do that. I know we don't. And we all are focused on controlling or reducing taxes. I know we are. But we also need to let's look down the road too and not be short-sighted. Let's look down the road and see what we can do as far as preparing ourselves to grow as a community. So, my 2 cents.
Clerk, please call the roll on the motion to add the comprehensive plan update to the current budget.
Counselor Brennan?
Nay.
Counselor Lavin?
No.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Morocco?
Aye.
Counselor Whitfield?
No.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
I was going to make another motion, but after this current conversation, and my motion was going to be to add a performance management software training program that was in the budget but not recommended by the city manager. It was for $55,000. I'm not going to bring that motion forward. I really think it's an important tool for staff to have because I think performance management is critical. We do the cookie cutter across the board percentage increase on salaries. In my whole career in the private sector, you work off of performance management systems, and those performance management systems help you work with your employees and your systems to be able to understand if you're being effective, if your employees are being effective, if they need improvements, if they need training. A lot of that with a software program like this, makes it easier for the city manager and department heads to be able to work with performance management systems. And there's a lot of training that comes along with performance management systems. But based on this previous conversation, I'm gonna not do that, but I'm probably gonna push pretty hard in 2026 to actually have that happen. So I'd like to see that come back up. I'm gonna move on to resolutions, but I'm also gonna ask the city manager next week, just to, the, line item 6326-4062 on page 44, which is Cornell Ag and Food Tech Park for 10,000. I'm gonna make a motion next week to remove that. So I'm gonna save that one for next week. Okay, moving on to resolutions. We added a resolution to adopt the amended levels of real estate property tax exemptions for seniors under real property tax law, section 467, to now show 19,000 even to $19,999.99 as the income range to qualify for 40% exemption. I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Counselor Grimaldi, I need a second. Counselor Peeler, any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Morocco?
Aye.
Counselor Whitfield?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
And the last resolution was added to have a public hearing to override the tax cap. I need a motion.
Motion. So moved.
Counselor Peeler, seconded by Counselor Petropoulos. Discussion. Counselor Lavin?
You know, I've been watching this process for 3-4 years, and it's very similar here. We're coming here with a 20% plus tax increase. We voted tonight to increase spending above that with new money coming in, and now to take some, at least a symbolic form of discipline of the tax cap, and we're going to go above it. We're heading for the result that got us into the position where we're 30% higher than all of our surrounding communities. This is the process. We talk about $300,000 or $400,000 worth of items in a $28 million budget, then we push it, comes down to a deadline of the end of October, and we kick the can down the line and raise taxes again on people who are already putting their houses on the market in this community. There's 4 or 5 on South Main Street just this week. They're looking, seniors are saying, I can't pay these taxes anymore, we're gonna do other things. And I don't see a pattern. This is the same kabuki theater I've watched the last 4 or 5 years, and I think we have to come back at it next week with a real sense of the urgency of what's going on out there in the community. We now are at 20% plus after a night of analysis. But I won't vote to go over the cap. There's no need for it. We need to be below the cap anyway.
Let's have a
Counselor Brennan?
hearing.
Well, I think it's
I
too
know,
early
I
to have
know.
a public
I'm gonna
hearing
stop it.
altogether.
Yeah.
There's way too much discussion to take place. Just a second ago, we talked about we don't want to raise taxes, and then we just voted to include a $75,000 expense.
That is not raising taxes.
Counselor?
Yes, it is.
No, it's spending savings.
Counselors, please let, Counselor Brennan has the floor.
So I'm just confused on these directions. I suggest that it's too soon to have a public hearing because there's too much work to be done before that point. If we had a public hearing, I can bet that the public would very much be in disfavor of overriding the tax cap, but I think it's too early. I suggest we table it.
Is that a motion?
That's my end of my 2 cents here.
When would you
So-
Motion to me, table.
So I offer a motion to table it.
I'll
Second by
it.
Counselor Lavin. Clerk, please
Second.
call the roll on tabling the public hearing for overriding the tax cap.
do a discussion
Counselor
on-
Brennan?
Aye.
Is there going to be discussion on that motion?
No, there's no
There's
discussion
no
on table.
discussion on the table.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Peeler?
Nay.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Nay.
Counselor Gilat?
Nay.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Nay.
Counselor Morocco?
Nay.
Counselor Whitfield,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino,
Nay.
motion defeated.
Okay, back to the original resolution, and there's been comments, so I'm gonna throw my comment out there. It ain't over till it's over, because we still have the rest of the month to work with. Then nobody else has put a motion forward
I
So-
did last meeting.
tonight. Nobody else has put a motion forward, and yours got defeated. I'm not saying,
Right,
keep the
right.
motions coming. I have
just-
no disagreement whatsoever. Counselor, I have the floor. And if you talk about this tax rate being 30% over other communities, I think the proposed tax rate at 1397 puts us somewhere in the middle now. So we're no longer leading based on the current projection, but it's not over yet. Okay. Clerk, please call the roll on the resolution.
One more.
Counselor.
Oh, Counselor Grimaldi, you have a comment?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that you understand, John, this is just for the public hearing.
I understand.
So when we get the public hearing, it can totally go down. You're just setting the public hearing. And the problem with this stupid tax cap thing is, most of the towns pass it not because their budget's over. They pass it because nobody knows how that guy in tax and finance sitting at his desk with the sandwich and coffee is doing the math. And I've seen in the towns where we'll calculate one thing and they'll come in way under us or way over us. So you pass it to just save that. And I always have had a problem because you're basically costing your taxpayers money. But if we don't pass it, the school already did, so it blows that money out already. So I can't hurt to have the public hearing where people can actually say, hey, yes, no, and not just us. I mean,
Right.
it's up to you guys.
I appreciate that. I just thought it was premature because, again, I thought there was going to be a
You
good
only
deal.
have like 3 weeks.
Budget season.
Yeah, you have to
You
do
have
it
to
before
by
you pass the
by time
budget.
comes
All right.
out. So, and you always could rescind it later.
Yep.
I
Clerk,
think
please
we're
call the
gonna
roll
have a budget.
on the resolution.
And the
Counselor-
resolution is what, please, again?
For a public hearing to override the tax cap, only for a public hearing.
Okay, all right.
Counselor Brennan,
Then the answer is aye.
Counselor Lavin,
No.
Counselor Peeler,
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi,
Aye.
Counselor Gilat,
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos,
Aye.
Counselor Morocco,
Aye.
Counselor Whitfield,
No.
Mayor Valentino,
Aye.
motion carried.
Motion to adjourn? Counselor Petropoulos, seconded by Counselor Gilat. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in oppose?